Good morning to all of you. Dear student, today we shall discuss salts, family of salt and pH of salt solution. We use a number of salt in our daily life, table salt or dietary salt or the common salt, baking soda, washing soda, gypsum, plaster of Paris. These are very common salt. Let's see what are salt. Consider these examples: sodium chloride or common salt or dietary salt. Ammonium sulfate, sodium carbonate, sodium hydrogen carbonate. Each compound contains a cation and an anion. Sodium chloride contains sodium cation and chloride anion. Ammonium sulfate contains ammonium cation and sulfate anion. Sodium carbonate contains sodium cation and carbonate anion. Sodium hydrogen carbonate contains sodium cation and bicarbonate as an ion. On the basis of this example, you can define salt as the compounds containing a cation and an anion. Salt are compounds containing cation and anion. In another way, sodium hydroxide reacts with hydrochloric acid to form sodium chloride, the salt, and water. So in another way you can define salt as the compound which are formed by the reaction of an acid with a base. The compound which are formed by the reaction of an acid with a base are called salt. We have a number of salt, and these salts are grouped. These group of salt are called families of the salt. A family of salt is a group of salt which contain either same cation or same anion. For example, sodium chloride, sodium carbonate, sodium nitrate, sodium sulfate. These are all salt which contain same cation, that is sodium cation. So they form the family of the sodium ions. In the same way, Na2SO4, CaSO4, calcium sulfate, CuSO4, MgSO4, magnesium sulfate, FeSO4, since they contain sulfate anion, So they form the family of sulfate ions. So what is the family of the salt? A group of salt which contain either same cation or same N ion is called family of salt. When salt are dissolved in water, they are hydrolyzed, and the solutions of the salt formed sorry, may be neutral or acidic or alkaline in nature. The nature of the salt depends on the acid and the base from which they are derived. In this class, 10th class, you will study salt of strong acid and strong base, salt of strong acid and weak base, and salt of weak acid and strong base. Salt of strong acid and strong base. Na2SO4. This is a salt of sodium hydroxide, which is a strong base, and sulfuric acid, which is a strong acid. NaCl is a salt of sodium hydroxide, which is a strong base, and hydrochloric acid, which is a strong acid. Sodium nitrate is a salt of sodium hydroxide, a strong base, and nitric acid, which is a strong acid. K2SO4, potassium sulfate, is a salt of potassium hydroxide, a strong base, sulfuric acid, a strong acid. Salt of strong acid and strong base are neutral. The pH of salt of this solution is 7, and they neither turns blue litmus red nor red litmus blue. Salt of strong acid and strong base are neutral in nature. pH of solutions of the salt is 7, and they are neither acidic nor alkaline. They do not have any effect on the blue litmus or red litmus. Salt of strong acid and weak base. Ammonium chloride is a salt of ammonium hydroxide, a weak base, and hydrochloric acid, a strong acid. Ammonium sulfate is a salt of ammonium hydroxide, a weak base, and sulfuric acid a strong acid. Salt of strong acid and weak base are acidic in nature. The pH of solutions of these salt is less than 7 and they turn blue litmus red. Salt of strong acid and weak base are acidic in nature and the pH of solutions of the salt is less than 7 and they turn blue litmus red. Salt of weak acid and a strong base. Consider the salt Na2CO3, sodium carbonate. It is a salt of sodium hydroxide, a strong base, and carbonic acid, which is a weak acid. Remember, the solutions of the salt of weak acid and strong base are alkaline in nature and the pH of solutions of these salt is greater than 7 and they turn red litmus blue. Solutions of salt of weak acid and strong base are alkaline in nature. They turn red litmus blue and the pH of solutions of the salt is always greater than 7. That's all today's